Before we start coding with our ultrasonic sensor and our line sensor, we should look at adding those to our subassembly. So we're going to keep our servo assembly from our prior lessons, because what we can use this for is to showcase the inputs from here. So we can have these sensors, these inputs, control the output of the servo. So it's a great way to get familiar with the coding of these two sensors, and going beyond just a serial print statement on the command window to actually have an output change. So what would be nice is to see in a future video, when we use this on a line, when it goes black or white, we see the servo react, and then to also use some kind of map function so that when the distance between my hand and this sensor is calibrated and moves, that the servo turns to an appropriate amount of degrees. Okay, so we're going to want both of these sensors. We have to have the line sensor facing the ground, ideally, and that might be a little bit too high, having it come off here on the edge. And honestly, it doesn't butt up very well here. Okay, so we can't just sort of like tie it in here because this piece here gets in the way. So we need to find a way to extend this out. When it comes to the ultrasonic sensor, we obviously don't want to have that facing the ground, because then there's not a lot of space here. It's more of just an on or off. Is there something in front of my sensor or not? And if we have it facing up, we run the risk of it sort of hitting our heads or like a camera or anything that's vertically above it. So ideally what we want to do is have this mounted facing out. Okay, so there's two things we have to do here. We have to find a bracket to have this facing out, and find some kind of extrusion or flat piece of metal to have this centered out a little bit further and safely connected so we don't break that plastic. So I'm going to reach into the bucket. I'm going to grab this bracket here, this 90 degree, and then I'm also going to grab a piece of flat metal, such as this one, because it'll allow us to sort of control our angle on this line sensor a little easier, okay, because we can rotate it. So let's go ahead and do this. So first things first, we're going to attach these maybe to the same point. We're going to save some screws, or we can attach them separately. It's really up to you. I think what I'm going to do is attach them separately just to keep things a little more manageable. So I'm just going to pop two screws in here, one across from each other, nice and easy. I'm going to put my fingers on the screws, grab some nuts, flip it over, and then just finger tighten that really quick. Okay, so you're going to want to do the same thing. Again, I know I've mentioned this in class, but at any point in time, you're more than welcome to pause these videos and sort of work along with me. I don't think I mentioned that in a previous video, and maybe I'll go back and shoot a video and sort of shove it in at the front of the course. But that's a great way to learn online, is to sort of work with your instructor, pause as you need, because that's the nice thing about having a pre-recorded video. You can pause it, and that way you don't fall behind. Okay, so there we go. That just took maybe a minute and a half to get that on. And then if I ever need to, I can loosen it up and rotate it. Okay, so that'll be for my line sensor. And then I'm going to attach that directly on here in a way, and maybe I'll put it over to the side. Because if I have it way out here like this, it's just easier to break it. So I'm going to tuck it in, I think, like this. So that way I just put a piece of paper, white or black, under it to get a response. So I'm going to grab two more screws, pop those in, and I'm just going to take this off for a second. The reason I use this piece of flat metal is because it allows me to center my screws how I want because of these channels versus the actual screw holes, which keep things a little more rigid. Okay, so with the two screws in place, I'll pop it back in. You can see I can sort of rotate it a little bit, which is nice. Okay, and that rotation, oops, that rotation will be a little more visible when my hand's not in the way. So let's pop that in. Okay, angle it towards the back, and we'll put those nuts on as well. I probably could have got away with using the smaller screw here rather than the half. I probably could have used the 5/16, and that would have been more than enough to secure something small like this made of plastic, a little sensor, but that's all right. I have these out already. The only thing it would save is me having to turn that nut a little longer, and it might make it a little easier to get it on. So screw that all the way down. We're going to sort of center it up here. I'm going to use my finger on the bottom to hold those nuts. Again, use the hex driver, tighten that up. These don't have to be super tight. It's just a matter of getting them on. Next, we're going to do the same thing for this ultrasonic sensor. I don't think you need to watch me do this all, so I'm going to go ahead and do it, but most likely I'm going to fast forward this on the actual output video. So fast forwarded through all that. I don't know if you would have seen it when I was going really fast, but this bracket here, when I had it going horizontal or vertical, sorry, with the sensor on the bottom, it was just tall enough to cause this to rock. And I didn't want to have it standing up for the same reason I didn't want to have this pointed out. I'm trying to minimize things breaking, so I decided to turn it 90 degrees on its side. I think that looks pretty good. It'll work quite well because I'll be able to run my hand back and forth. And you may have also noticed that when I went to put screws in, this was too thick for those small 5/16 screws, so I had to go and get a 1/2 inch. And when you're building these kind of assemblies just to get things prototyped or working, you may find that you have to replan your idea or reevaluate what you're using as components and just do what works best for you. Okay, so here's our final assembly. We have our servo, our ultrasonic sensor here, and our line sensor on the back. I kept the cord access easy. Okay, that's another reason why I didn't want to have the ultrasonic sensor eyes up, because then I have to plug in from the bottom. I want to keep all the cords easy access. So if you imagine me plugging in this sensor cable here, it would snake across the end. I could even plug it in and then run it under the channel. And then the same thing with the line sensor. I'll just plug it in from the top. Okay, so nice easy assembly. Go ahead and make whatever you want, but just have something that you can place on the desk and code away.